Boker Tov, good morning, as we are back in our regular setting for sharing Torah, learning Torah Sunday morning in a relaxed and atmosphere that allows us all to focus and study some Torah over here. Last week we were at the amazing Kinos HaShluchim, the convention of close to 6,500 people that were there at the banquet, which was absolutely inspiring, amazing. I would say some of the highlights of the convention was about, number one, meeting friends that you've grown up with from all over the world who came, shared inspiration, stories, techniques, how to bring their experiences in terms of enhancing what you could do in making the community around us a better place, etc. Definitely the banquet was also a highlight. Mr. George Rohr, who spoke very beautifully. And I would say that amongst that, the highlight is being present at a once-in-a-lifetime experience, the completion of 36 Sifrei Torah, 36 books of Torah, Torah scrolls that were completed, which have been donated and will find its place throughout various Chabad houses throughout the world. That was very, very special and meaningful, and dancing together in such an uplifted spirit with after the Torah was completed. It was just all very special. There's much more details that can be shared, but will suffice for that. So today's class, as is more usual, is a Torah class, and in the class we're going to share, who should you pick as a spouse. Now, I will say this is not an extensive class on marriage. Maybe we'll do that. This is sharing a thought from the Parsha, from the Torah, from the biblical readings of these weeks, and seeing how that could give us a little or important insight in the most important decision a human being makes in their life is who they should pick as their spouse. It's always good to start on a light note. As soon as you start with some jokes about marriage, you are bound to get yourself into trouble, but I'll do it anyway. And if you don't like my joke, so be it. but hopefully you do, and it sets the tone here a little bit on the lighter side. So the question is over here is who you should pick as your spouse. And the story is told of a fellow who is who's having a hard time getting married, finding a shidduch, finding a match. And his friend asks him what's going on. He says, look, every single girl I bring home, my mother does not like. I bring home a girl and I say, Ma, what do you think? Should I marry this girl? And every single girl I bring home is a no, is a thumbs down. Mom doesn't like the girl. So the friend says, so why don't you bring home a girl just like your mother and finish? And your life will go on and you'll be good. You'll be able to marry. He says, the problem is I did that, but the one I brought home a girl just like my mother, that one my father didn't like. Okay. So that's just a marriage joke. I hope I could get away with that one. Anyway, l'chaim, we always start with the bracha. If I didn't say the blessing yet on the coffee. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehakol neh b'dvarei. Thank you, God Almighty, for delicious coffee. Okay, so these weeks, the portions of the weeks, these weeks, we're reading and learning about Rebecca and Isaac, the second of the forefathers. And in the parsha of last week, we read about the first shidduch, the first matchmaking of Isaac and Rebecca is the first Jewish matchmaking. Yet Isaac is the first Jewish child from Abraham. And we read about Abraham sending his servant Eliezer to go ahead and to find a wife for Isaac. And then the following parsha, which we read yesterday, we read about how they, Ela Toldot Yitzchak ben Avraham, how they establish a family, and how Yitzchak and the blessings of Jacob and Esau. I mean, there's just so much we could talk about. There's so much we could talk about and learn and study. And this week's portion, we read about the fact that Jacob has to run away, and it's already focuses on Jacob, but it focuses on Jacob and how he finds his spouses, which is Leah and Rachel and Bilhah and Zilpah. So it's a lot about finding your spouse and how to build a family. But I want to focus today on on a verse that we read about 2 weeks ago. And listen to this verse. Okay, so here, when we go back to the first Jewish marriage, and we talk about Isaac and Rebekah, so over there, we have the following verse. This is in Genesis. I like to read the Hebrew. This is Genesis chapter 24, verse 67. And I'm going to assume that for the most part you're familiar with the basic story, but just to give a short recap, which is that Sarah has passed away. Abraham says, I gotta find a wife for my son Isaac, the second of our forefathers. He sends his servant, his slave Eliezer, his most loyal servant, and the one in charge of his household. The Torah details how he empowers. He sends his servant Eliezer to find a wife for Isaac, for Yitzchak, and how he finds Rivka, and what the qualifying characteristic of Rivka that impressed Eliezer after following the instructions of Abraham, which said, make sure it's someone from my own family. The qualifying characteristic was he saw Rebekah's kindness. He saw how kind Rebekah was. How so? That Rebekah went ahead and made an effort to give everybody, after the journey that he took, to provide water for Eliezer, for all the camels, for all of Eliezer's men that traveled with him. So that is the character. So that's one very key insight into what you should choose, not who you should choose, what you should look for in a spouse. Kindness, but genuine kindness. And let's focus on that for a moment. Then there's, again, more beautiful stuff over here. So bear with us today as we study some more Torah. L'chaim. Now, I can tell you like this, that when thank God I've been blessed with many children. As we say in Yiddish, ken ein hara, b'li ein hara, together with my wife. And Baruch Hashem, we have several of our children married. We still have quite a number of children that, with God's help, will find the right shidduch. And of course, one of the key things that you ask in the looking for a match for your child, or if your child comes to you and says, Ta or Ma, there's somebody that I'd like to date, someone who I met, could you please find out a little bit more about them? Because I want to maybe digress here for a moment, although it's not a full digression, is that when it comes to marriage, when it comes to matchmaking, I do get often asked the question, Rabbi, what is this? Isn't the shidduch concept, isn't the concept of matchmaking outdated? Today we live in a time, boy finds girl, girl finds boy, and that's that. What's this matchmaking business? And is it a key for success? So, so there's, let me explain, because I know from questions that I've got that there is a misunderstanding about the concept of matchmaking, definitely as it exists today. Some think that in the Orthodox or Hasidic world, basically the two dads and the two moms get together and say, okay, I have a wonderful girl, a wonderful boy, you have a wonderful girl and boy, let's get them together and let's get them married. That is not what matchmaking is today. That's not what a shidduch is, okay? How about if that is what you thought matchmaking is, so give me a thumbs up. Don't be afraid. We will not bop you over the head. If that was your notion of what a shidduch matchmaking is, if that's what it was, And I know to many it is, just based on the feedback that I get, that is not the case. Matchmaking today is primarily where the parents will do research about a potential spouse to find out if the qualities and the values of the children, boy and girl over here, match each other. And the reason why that has virtue, and that's something really important, is because, as we know, the simple saying of love is blinding. When boy and girl meet and there's an attraction, if they meet first on their own before proper research is done, that can often, unfortunately, and statistics have proven that often what happens is, yes, you are attracted, but because the values and who you are at your core really do not match up, unfortunately, often when the attraction either wears off or is not strong enough to withstand the deeper differences that you have, and unfortunately things start to fall apart, and it doesn't have a good, happy ending. When the values match up, your goals match up, your outlook at life match up, your ethics match up, etc., you're starting from a place where you're far ahead of the game. Then you meet and you see if the chemistry is there, if the values are there. You're coming, and the chance of success is far deeper, far greater, and so on. And it also has to do with what the purpose of marriage is, which we will talk about in a moment. So I'm saying this, that definitely when I do research for my dear children, one of the top questions is, does the potential spouse, be it boy or girl, have the attribute of kindness? Like we saw by the first shidduch, the first match. It's pretty amazing. Think about it. The Torah is very precise with its words. The Torah is very precise in choosing what it describes and so on. Very precise. When Eliezer is looking for a wife for the first Jewish child, which will impact all of our history, Jewish or not Jewish, you could appreciate that the Torah would be very, very careful in deciding what is it that we want to highlight over here. It could have highlighted and said, is she pretty? They could have highlighted and said, is she smart? It could have highlighted, does she have a degree? Does she have a trade? There's so many other things you could perhaps highlight, which are maybe important as well. But really, there's one description that the Torah zeroes in on, which is her kindness, her care, her genuine kindness. That's telling. That's very telling. So bear that in mind. So that is definitely one of my first and most important questions that I ask in a potential spouse for my children. Now, I want to move on over here. The verse after Eliezer chooses Rivka and says, this is the one that God has shown me to be the spouse of my master's son, the chapter concludes with this statement. The chapter concludes and says the following. I actually want to read one verse before that. Vatisa Rivka Seinel. She comes and she, verse 63 says like this. As she's coming back with Eliezer, it says, Vayetze Yitzchak lasuach basod. These are the holy words of God, and then I will translate. Lifnos Arav, Vayiso Einov, Vayar Vehine Gmalim Ba'im. Atisa Rivka Seineho, Vateira es Yitzchak Vatipoil me al Hagomel. I will translate from verse 63 on, okay? Isaac went on. Yeah, it's a little bit hard for me to read, the words are small. Okay. Isaac went out to pray in the field towards evening. He looked up and he saw camels were approaching. Rebecca looked up and saw Isaac, and she was stunned by his splendid appearance. And the Medrash says that part of the reason she was stunned and recognized him as a great man is because she saw him praying. So mark that off perhaps as check number 2 in what you should look in, what should impress you as when you're looking for a spouse. Before we said that, and this goes for both men and women, I believe, and if you want to disagree with that, go ahead, tell me your thoughts. But here we see quality number 2, that Rebecca was impressed tremendously because as the verse continues, she lowered herself from the camel. Actually, the literal words of she lowered herself from the camel. The literal words of the Torah is not that she lowered herself, but she actually fell from the camel in being so impressed. What is it that impressed her, amongst other things, is that she saw that he was praying. And from the way he was praying, and the sincerity of the praying, and the fact that he was praying, that's what said to her, this is a great person. Okay, quality number 2. The verse continues and says the following: Rebecca looked up and saw Isaac, and everybody's okay. She lowered herself from the camel and said to the servant, who is that man walking in the field toward us? The servant said, he's my master. She took the veil and covered herself, which is one of the sources of why at every marriage there is a veil that the bride is covered with. There are various explanations to that veil, but this is the origins of the veil. Interestingly enough, one of the nice explanations given is that the reason why you have a veil by the chuppah is to announce that I'm not marrying this person because of her outer beauty only, but I'm marrying her because of that which is not seen outwardly, her inner beauty. Okay, let's move on. And this is where I want to focus a little bit more, is on this last verse. Over here, verse 67. Isaac brought her to the tent of his mother, Sarah. He took Rebekah, she became his wife, and he loved her. Isaac was comforted for the loss of his mother. So I want to analyze this verse in detail, and hopefully that'll give us insight into how and what you should look for, in addition to the things just mentioned, in what you should look for in a spouse. And that explains my opening joke. Okay. Yitzchak brought her to the tent of his mother Sarah. Now we know his mother was Sarah. Why does the Torah tell us ha'oya lo Sarah imay, to the tent of his mother Sarah? So Rashi tells us the following amazing insight from the Talmud, from the Medrash. So I do not have the Medrash here, the Rashi right here in front of me in this particular Chumash. But hold on a second. Okay, but here he has sort of a quote from, or a synopsis from Rashi. So listen to this. Okay, listen to this over here. The verse states that Isaac brought her to the tent of his mother Sarah, suggesting that he brought her to the tent, and look, it was Sarah's mother. In Hebrew, the words always grammatically can be interpreted in various ways. So it says over here, Yitzchak ha'oyala, Sarah imay. Yitzchak brought her into the tent, Sarah his mother. It can be interpreted, and the Medrash, of course, always goes a little more on the homiletic side, He brought her into the tent, like the tent. The fact that it says the tent almost seems to say that it's a renowned, a distinct, unique tent. And what is it distinct about it? Sarah Imai, that all of a sudden she is like his mother, Sarah. What does that mean? She became the likeness of Sarah, his mother. In what way? For as long as Sarah was alive, a candle burned from one Shabbos Eve to the next. We know that one of the unique, beautiful mitzvahs that the Jewish woman has is to light the Shabbat candles before the Shabbat. And that has a beautiful impact on the warmth and the holiness of the home as we enter into the Shabbat. The warmth, the calmness that descends, the tranquility that descends upon a home after the Shabbat candles are lit, after all the rushing and the hecticness and the stress of getting ready for Shabbat. So, in Sarah's tent, the Medrash tells us there was a miracle. The Shabbat candles was lit on Friday, and it burned miraculously like Hanukkah. And it says it's like somewhat of a forerunner to Hanukkah. It burned for an entire week until before Shabbat the next week, and that's when it burnt out. And then Sarah lit the candles again. Once Sarah passed away, this miracle stopped happening. And now, when Isaac, Yitzchak, brought Rivka into his mom's tent and she lit the Shabbat candles, the miracle reoccurred. And that's how he knew she was Sarah, his mother. That was number one. Number two, the dough would be blessed, and a cloud was attached to the tent, a certain cloud of holiness and spirituality. There's a lot we could talk about over here. I want to share a couple of things. I want to share, and I hope with Hashem's help, I'll be able to convey the beauty of this message. So, when asked, what should you look for in a spouse? So here the Torah is telling us that what Isaac, if you notice also, it says over here that he brought her to his mother's tent, he took her as a wife, and then it says, and he loved her. He took her as a wife, and he loved her. You might ask the question, shouldn't it be he loved her and he took her as a wife? Did Yitzchak not love her before he took her as a wife? Let me ask you a question. Let me ask myself a question. Do you love your wife more now that you're married, or did you love her more when you were dating, before you married her? Has the love diminished? Has the love decreased? Has it increased? Has it become more powerful? Has it become more real? More authentic? Which love is more real? The love that attracts you to your potential spouse, boy to girl, girl to boy, or the love that comes after marriage, when you truly recognize each other's qualities? Does it dull? Does it cause perhaps even regret? So here the Torah tells us that Yitzchak took Rivka as a wife, vayehoveh, and he loved her. The marriage, and then when he recognized who Rivka was, only that's when his true love for his wife came to the forefront. And that's connected also to the parsha that we just read and the meme that I sent out. Ela told us Yitzchak ben Avram, Avram told us Yitzchak, the parsha this past week. We just read yesterday. This is the descendants of Yitzchak, the son of Abraham. Abraham begat, gave birth to Yitzchak, which seems totally redundant. Obviously, if Yitzchak is the son of Abraham, then Abraham begot Yitzchak. So the Medrash says, as the meme, my Shabbat meme that went out on Friday, the Medrash says that sometimes a child is embarrassed with who his father is, and sometimes a father is embarrassed, unfortunately, by who his children are. But here, Yitzchak was proud to be the son of Abraham, and that's who he was he identified and was glad to say, Abraham is my father, and Abraham was proud to say that Yitzchak was his child. So, what was the quality over here that Yitzchak was so enamored and so at comfort to the extent that he says, this is my wife and I love her, is when he saw in his wife the qualities that he saw in his mother. They do say, I do not know the statistics on this, that a boy will often marry someone similar to his mom. A girl will marry someone similar to her dad. I don't know if that's statistically accurate. It's just something that is said. I mean, I don't know if it's statistically accurate. But in this case, what Yitzchak saw in Rebecca that says, I love her, is he saw the qualities of his mom. And what are the qualities? The qualities are 3 qualities that the Torah mentions. And here, I want to share with you a thought that I heard from Rabbi Shais Taub, who has a beautiful way of expressing ideas. And he said the following: these 3 things, the tent, the blessing in the dough, and the Shabbat candle miracle represents 3 beautiful, vital things that a mom provides. Because what is the objective of marriage? The objective of marriage is, as the Torah describes, God, when he creates Adam, he says, Lo tov hayot adam levado, it's not good for man to be alone. And the objective of marriage, of course, is for companionship, for each of the spouses bringing out the best in one another. You're asked often as a rabbi, what is the success to marriage? What is the key to success? And one of the answers to that, of course, is the usual answer is respect. Treat the person with proper dignity. But a key to marriage is that you each bring out the best in each other, because you recognize and you highlight and you value and you appreciate each other's qualities and what the 2 of you bring to this relationship. If you are with a person, dating a person, and they don't make you feel good about yourself, not in a selfish way, but in a meaningful way, recognizing and valuing your talents, there is something that's not right there. A healthy marriage is really when there's an admiration and an encouragement of each one of you to bring out and to do what you're good at, your talents, your qualities. So in this case, Isaac and I said number 1, and number 2, of course, is within that healthy, peaceful, meaningful, deep relationship to raise the next generation. As the first mitzvah in the Torah is to be fruitful and to multiply. So therefore, when looking for a spouse, you want to see these 2 objectives being achieved. And Isaac understood that when he saw in Rebecca the qualities that his mother had, in achieving these 2 objectives, he says, this is the woman that I want, Vayeva, and he loved her. So let's analyze these 3 things. Blessing in the dough represents what we expect from a Jewish mom, what we expect from our spouse. And when I say expect, I mean that in a positive way, is, of course, providing nourishment. To use the language of the Talmud, dad goes out to work, he brings in the wheat, and mom is the one who actually prepares it in a way that it is nourished, that it's a way that nourishes the family. So mom, the blessing in the dough represents the nourishment that mom provides in the special way that only mom can for the household. Number 2 is the tent. The cloud on the tent, the cloud of representing the Shekhinah, the resting of Hashem, represents a wholesome tent, which represents both clothing and shelter, which is part of what a man provides, but also part of what the spouse, the wife, provides. is the second thing that is represented in the blessings and the miracles that Isaac saw returned when he took Rebekah into his mother's tent. But number 3 is also highly important. And that is that he saw the candle, the miracle of the candle. The miracle of the candle represents not the physical nourishment, but the spiritual nourishment and environment that the woman, the mother in particular, is able to provide for a home. We all know, there was a discussion between, and a disagreement between Viktor Frankl, the famous psychologist, and Maslow, who lived in different parts of the world, of the hierarchy of human needs. Whereas Maslow, interestingly enough, who lived in California, in a place of abundance, relatively speaking, spoke about breathing and food and shelter, companionship, meaning those were the most basic was food, and then companionship, meaning in the order of importance of what a human being needs and hierarchy-wise. Whereas Viktor Frankl observed, and he said that in his understanding of the human character and his observation of life, having meaning in life was actually the most essential, even more in sort of the hierarchy of importance than food. And a story to highlight this point, Rabbi Chase shared this story and you mentioned the name of the individual. I do not mention the name, who was a Holocaust survivor who became a known, I believe, author, but I do not remember his name. And he was unique in the fact, which wasn't that common, that he went through one of the concentration camps together with his dad. And they really looked after each other. And they were going through that hell together. And one day, the fellow recounts that he came back into the barracks and he sees his father hunched over something, about to do something, and he gets a little closer and he sees the following. He sees his father has like some little metal scrap, and took a little piece of his prison garb, his concentration camp outfit. I forgot the word, slips my mind right now. And he took a little strip of it, and he saved a little bit of his butter, of his daily butter ration, which was essential for life. And he made that into a wick, and he was about to light it. And he understood what was going on over here. He understood that his father, because it was Hanukkah, which is coming up soon, that his father went ahead and he fashioned this sort of makeshift menorah in order to fulfill the mitzvah of the Hanukkah menorah. And he was so shaken, he was so taken aback by that, because he knew that little slice of butter is essential to keep his father alive for another day. And without even thinking, he shouted, "Stop!" to his dad, not wanting his dad to waste a little bit of butter. And his father was startled, and he turns around and he says, "Dad, what are you doing? That's your life." And his dad responded and said like this: I could survive another day or two without physical nourishment, but I cannot survive even one moment without meaning, without hope. So the candle that Yitzchak saw in his mother Rivka, the Shabbat candle, represented that meaning, that holiness, that connection to who we are on a much deeper level, rather than just our material, physical satisfaction and needs, which is provided by our wonderful mom and the spouse, the mother of the home. So the candle this miraculous candle that Rebecca provided was to Yitzchak the proof that this is my mother and all that she represents in the essential companionship that I need and in our building the future generations. So, I mean, there's also just a nice sort of little insight that the miracle of the candle burning throughout the week represents that just like when the candles lit Shabbat after the entire hecticness of Friday, the Shabbat candles brings about sort of the Shabbos descending upon the home, or might we say ascending into the spirit of Shabbat, of beautiful tranquility and warmth and holiness of the Holy Shabbat. So the miracle of Rebecca and Sarah was that same feeling, even within the tranquility of the week, permeated the home throughout the entire week. So that's a nice thought. But this is the discussion and the message in how and what we should look for in our spouse in building a beautiful home, a beautiful, meaningful home, a home of peace, a home of meaning, a healthy home, a home where the children are proud of their parents, the parents are proud of their children. The generation gap of values, of declining values, is challenged, hopefully successfully. It might be difficult, but we have to make the effort. And with the effort, we shall succeed. Sometimes we don't see the fruits of that immediately. Sometimes it might take time. Interestingly enough, even with the portions that we read during these weeks, where we read about Yishmael, who Abram had to expel from his home because of his behavior, Rashi and the Talmud tells us, and it's alluded to in the words of the Torah, that Ishmael did tshuva, that Ishmael repented because he was a child of Abraham. It sooner or later finds its impact in the return of our children, even if they perhaps take a little bit of a side path in their own personal growth. So this is the thought for the day. There's much more that can be discussed about this. Thank you for allowing me to share these words of Torah. I do want to start, as part of this class, a bit of a mailbag discussion and maybe concluding at least some of the classes. So if you have a question on what has been discussed, or just a general question relating to whatever, and you want a Jewish rabbinic perspective, we will try to pick a question that we feel might be of interest to the listening audience, to our dear friends here, and we'll try to address it. So please do, whether it's through responding here on this class or just an email. You can send an email via chabadcs@gmail.com or via Messenger, whatever it might be, WhatsApp, and we will try to address it so that we add a little bit more sort of color and diversity to this class. Thank you for listening. Have a fantastic week. Hanukkah's coming up. We're excited. All the best. And a big welcome. I know some of you have expressed thank you here on the comments. So without listing all the names, you're welcome. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to share these wonderful words of Torah. Have a fantastic and blessed week.